My name is Dylan Thomas, and for most of my adult life, I thought I was one of the lucky ones. I met Rachel during our junior year of college. We were introduced by a mutual friend, and from the first moment I saw her, I was drawn to her. Rachel wasn't what most people would call traditionally beautiful, but there was something about her, a certain grace and confidence that made her unforgettable. Her blue eyes were striking, her shoulder-length blonde hair always seemed effortlessly styled, and her petite figure was perfectly balanced. Within weeks of meeting, I knew I wanted to be with her, and within a month, we were a couple. I never doubted that I could win her heart, and when I did, it felt like my life had just clicked into place. By the time we graduated, our relationship had only deepened, and getting married seemed like the natural next step. Rachel and I tied the knot and embarked on what I thought would be a lifetime of happiness. We started small, living in a modest condo while we worked our way up in our careers. Rachel went into real estate, and I found a stable job in electronic manufacturing. Over time, our hard work paid off. We bought our dream home, built a comfortable life, and welcomed two wonderful children into the world, Alice, now 8, and Jacob, 6. They became the center of our universe, and I cherished every moment of being a father. For 12 years, I thought we had it all. Sure, there were ups and downs, but I believed we loved each other deeply. Rachel was the love of my life, and I was devoted to her. I trusted her completely, never doubting for a second that she felt the same. Looking back, I can see there were signs, little cracks in the foundation of our marriage that I ignored. I thought we were just busy, like any couple raising kids and managing careers. I thought we were solid. That illusion was shattered on a Thursday afternoon when I received a call from my daughter Alice's school. She had fallen ill, and since Rachel wasn't answering her phone, I left work to pick her up. What seemed like a minor inconvenience turned out to be the moment that revealed everything I had missed, the betrayal that had been unfolding right under my nose. When I arrived home with Alice, I noticed a strange car parked in our garage, right next to Rachel's. My heart sank. It's a feeling I'll never forget, this cold, sinking dread mixed with disbelief. I told myself it had to be something innocent, but deep down, I knew. I just didn't want to admit it to myself. I made an excuse to keep Alice in the car and went inside alone. The sight of them, my wife and her boss, in the home we had built together, in our bedroom, confirmed my worst fears. In that moment, my world fell apart. I didn't confront them. I couldn't. My priority was Alice, so I left quietly, taking her to my mother's house before I could process what I had just witnessed. I told my mom I had to return to work, but the truth was, I needed time to think. What should I do next? How could I even begin to make sense of what I had just uncovered? That afternoon marked the beginning of the most painful and transformative chapter of my life. I wasn't just heartbroken, I was consumed by anger and a need for justice. What followed wasn't just a journey through betrayal and divorce, it was a descent into the raw reality of love, trust, and what happens when those things are destroyed. The days following my discovery were a blur of anger, sadness, and confusion. I couldn't believe what I had seen. The woman I loved, the mother of my children, had betrayed me in the most personal and cruel way imaginable. I had always trusted Rachel, never questioning her loyalty, and now that trust was shattered. I felt lost, unsure of how to move forward. My immediate concern was protecting my children. Alice and Jacob were too young to understand what was happening, and I wanted to shield them from the fallout as much as possible. I dropped Alice off at my mother's that day, but I couldn't bring myself to tell her what I'd seen. Instead, I focused on what I needed to do, gather proof, plan my next steps, and ensure that Rachel would face the consequences of her actions. I knew confronting Rachel and her lover in the heat of the moment would accomplish nothing. I needed to stay calm and think rationally. When I returned to work that afternoon, I closed my office door and called my colleague Aiden Jackson, a trusted friend who worked in our company's security division. Aiden was an expert in surveillance equipment, and I needed his help to gather evidence of Rachel's affair. When Aiden arrived at my office, he could immediately tell something was wrong. I told him everything, how I had come home to find my wife cheating on me with her boss. He listened carefully, offering his sympathy but also encouraging me to focus on gathering evidence. I explained my plan to install cameras and microphones around the house to document their encounters. Aiden agreed to help. He provided me with a set of state-of-the-art wireless cameras and microphones that could be discreetly installed in the key areas of the house. He also gave me a small voice-activated recorder to place in Rachel's car, which would capture one-sided conversations during her drives. By the next day, everything was ready. That evening, I returned home and faced Rachel for the first time since discovering her infidelity. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. She greeted me with a smile, acting as if everything was normal, while I was barely holding myself together. To avoid breaking down in front of her, I pretended to feel unwell and told her I would be sleeping in the guest room. She seemed concerned, but I could tell she was also relieved. It meant she didn't have to face me. After putting the kids to bed, I set to work installing the surveillance equipment. Aiden had shown me exactly where to place the cameras and microphones to capture the most activity. I focused on the living room, kitchen, and, most painfully, our bedroom. It was excruciating to install a camera in the place where we had once shared our most intimate moments, knowing it would now serve as a witness to her betrayal. The next few days were a test of my patience and emotional endurance. I kept up the facade of normalcy, going to work and interacting with Rachel as little as possible. Meanwhile, I monitored the footage from the cameras, confirming what I already knew. Rachel and her boss were using our home as their personal retreat during the hours I was at work. The recordings were damning. Not only did they capture their physical encounters, but they also revealed the cruel things Rachel said about me to her lover. Hearing her compare me unfavorably to him was like pouring salt into an open wound. She mocked my dedication to our family, belittled my efforts as a husband, and praised her boss for being everything I supposedly wasn't. At one point, they joked about using our kitchen table for their activities, laughing at the idea of me unknowingly eating at the same spot. It was beyond humiliating, it was dehumanizing. But as painful as it was to watch and listen, it strengthened my resolve to hold her accountable. Over the next few weeks, I took steps to prepare for the inevitable divorce. I consulted with a lawyer, ensuring I would be protected financially and legally. I canceled our joint credit cards, transferred half of our savings to an account in my name, and updated the beneficiaries on my life insurance to include only Alice and Jacob. I knew I couldn't prevent the divorce from impacting my children, but I could at least ensure their financial stability. I also began crafting a plan to confront Rachel and expose her affair to those who needed to know, including her lover's wife. I felt no guilt about this. Rachel and her boss had shown no respect for me or our marriage, and I saw no reason to shield them from the consequences of their actions. Every interaction with Rachel during this time felt surreal. She continued to play the role of a loving wife and mother, cooking dinner, helping the kids with homework, and even asking about my day. But I could see through her act. Her cheerful demeanor after her afternoon rendezvous was unmistakable, and it made my stomach turn. The final straw came when I reviewed the recordings from the day Rachel had assured me she was busy with work. The footage showed her and her boss in our bedroom, laughing and mocking the very foundation of our marriage. They treated my home, the place where our children were growing up, as their playground. By this point, I had everything I needed to confront her. I had video and audio recordings, documented proof of her lies, and a clear picture of the person she had become. The woman I had loved and trusted was gone, replaced by someone I no longer recognized. Thursday arrived, the day I had decided to expose Rachel and her boss, Logan White. It wasn't just about ending our marriage anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity and ensuring they both faced the fallout of their actions. My plan was set. I had the evidence, the legal groundwork, and the determination to see it through. That morning, I left the house early, telling Rachel I had a packed day at work. She kissed me goodbye, her expression full of warmth that felt like a slap in the face given what I knew she was planning that afternoon. I went to work but left shortly after to prepare for what was coming. Around noon, I parked near our home, hidden from view but close enough to see anyone coming or going. Rachel arrived home at her usual time, about 1:50 p.m., and 5 minutes later, Logan White pulled into the driveway. They entered the house together, and I knew what they were about to do. I stayed outside, waiting for them to finish. It was strangely surreal, sitting in my car, knowing my wife was inside betraying me again, but this time, I felt more numb than angry. I had already grieved the loss of our marriage. Now, I was simply waiting for the moment to enact my plan. At 3 p.m., Logan's car backed out of the driveway, and he left. Rachel followed shortly after, presumably to pick up Alice and Jacob from school. Once the coast was clear, I entered the house. The smell of perfume and cologne lingered in the air, a cruel reminder of what had just occurred. I didn't need to check the cameras, I already knew everything had been recorded. Instead, I focused on setting up for the confrontation. In the garage, I retrieved the pieces of furniture they had so casually used during their affair, our kitchen table, the throw rug from the living room, and even the bedding from our master bedroom. I dragged everything onto the front lawn and set it up as a display for the neighborhood to see. On each piece, I placed signs with enlarged stills from the surveillance footage, leaving no doubt about what had happened. The most damning stills showed Rachel and Logan in intimate positions, their faces unmistakable. The captions were blunt and to the point: Rachel Thomas and Logan White, cheaters caught in the act. By the time I finished, it was 4 p.m., and I returned to my car to wait for Rachel's arrival with the kids. When Rachel pulled into the driveway around 4:30 p.m., she froze. Her face turned pale as she took in the scene. The children were still in the car, their attention thankfully focused on something else. Rachel stepped out, her body trembling as she approached me. "What is this?" she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. I looked at her, calm but firm. "This is the truth, Rachel. And now everyone knows it." Her reaction was a mixture of panic and anger. She begged me to take it down, insisting we could talk about this privately. I refused. I told her this wasn't just about us anymore, it was about the lies, the betrayal, and the pain she had caused. Rachel tried to pull the signs down herself, but I stopped her. I warned her that if she touched anything, I'd make sure the footage went public. Her tears flowed freely now, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. But then I remembered the months of deception, the mocking laughter, and the casual way she had treated our marriage as disposable. The neighbors began to notice the scene. Some watched from their windows, others came out to see what was happening. Rachel fled into the house, leaving me to explain the situation to the kids. I told them there had been a big argument and that they'd be staying with their grandmother for a while. They didn't understand, but they trusted me. After dropping the kids off with my mom, I returned home to find Rachel sitting in the kitchen, her face buried in her hands. She asked me why I had to humiliate her like that, claiming she never wanted to hurt me. Her words felt hollow, like a script she had memorized to deflect blame. "I didn't humiliate you, Rachel," I said coldly. "You did that to yourself. You brought him into our home, into our bed. You mocked me to his face while pretending to love me. This is your doing." Rachel begged me for another chance, promising to end things with Logan and rebuild our marriage. But I knew it was too late. The damage was irreversible. I told her I'd be filing for divorce the next morning and that she'd be hearing from my lawyer soon. That night, I packed a bag and left to stay with my mom. I needed space, and I needed time to focus on my next steps. As painful as it was to walk away from the home we had built together, I knew I couldn't stay, not after everything that had happened. The following day, Rachel and Logan were both served at their workplaces. I later learned that Logan's wife had also received the evidence I had sent her. Logan lost his job, his partnership at the firm terminated due to a morality clause. His wife filed for divorce, and from what I've heard, his reputation has made it nearly impossible for him to find steady work. Rachel, on the other hand, faced a different kind of fallout. Her real estate career crumbled as word of her affair spread. She moved out of our home temporarily, and the kids stayed with me while we worked out custody arrangements. Despite everything, I refused to let my anger interfere with their relationship with their mother. They deserved stability, even if their parents couldn't provide it together. The weeks after the confrontation were emotionally exhausting. Rachel tried to reach out several times, begging me to reconsider the divorce. She sent long messages apologizing, blaming stress, loneliness, and her own insecurities for her actions. But no excuse could erase what she had done. When our divorce proceedings began, Rachel insisted she still loved me, pleading for joint counseling to save our marriage. I told her the truth, I couldn't love her anymore, not after the betrayal, the lies, and the mockery. I had given her my trust, my loyalty, and 12 years of my life. In return, she had treated me like a fool. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. Rachel received the house, but I secured joint custody of Alice and Jacob. For their sake, I remained cordial with Rachel, though every interaction was a reminder of what had been lost. I moved into a nearby condo, staying close enough to remain a consistent presence in my children's lives. Rachel eventually found work as a receptionist, abandoning her real estate career, which had become tainted by rumors of her affair. She hasn't dated seriously since the divorce, at least according to Alice, who keeps me updated on her mom's life. Rachel seems to have accepted her new reality, though I doubt she'll ever truly escape the consequences of her choices. As for Logan White, his life unraveled even more spectacularly. His wife divorced him, taking most of their shared assets, and his reputation as a serial adulterer followed him in his attempts to find work. From what I've heard, he's struggling financially and socially, which, frankly, feels like justice. In time, I've started to rebuild my life. Dating still feels impossible. I can't imagine opening myself up to the risk of betrayal again. My focus remains on Alice and Jacob, giving them the stability they need to move forward. They've adjusted well, but I know the divorce has left scars. When I reflect on everything, I don't feel anger anymore. I feel sadness, for the life we lost, for the trust that was broken, and for the way our family fell apart. But I also feel a sense of closure. I did what I had to do to protect myself and my children, and I don't regret standing up for my dignity. To anyone listening, I offer this advice: trust is the foundation of any relationship. If you ever find yourself in a situation like mine, remember that betrayal says more about the betrayer than it does about you. Don't lose yourself trying to save someone who doesn't value you. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, or if you have thoughts to share, please leave a comment below. And if you found this video helpful, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Together, we can find strength in our stories.